All right. I think I'm up and running here. So I guess the purpose of this video is to just do a quick review of my my mentee's gameplay. So I guess a few disclaimers going into this. He asked me to be, pretty critical, so I'm going to be. With that being said, I mean, I've kind of pre-watched a little bit of this. I mean, definitely a lot of improvement. So don't take anything I'm saying too critically. I definitely think that uh, you're going in the right direction here. But with that being said, I'm gonna go through this. Really kind of dig in on my thoughts. Things to think about. Um, anything that kind of comes to mind as I go through this. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and get started here. So starting off here, I mean, nothing too fancy, obviously. Um, so one thing I will say, so Shadow Saving Gal. Um, First thing that I would think about here, especially with those abilities. So it was so quick. I don't know if anybody really caught it, but Gal had Rage. Everybody else's abilities didn't really matter. Like there's nothing there that was like high value that you would intend to use. Very significantly at least. Like steel, runic, you might be able to get a fight or like a very niche like use out of. But when you're really going downhill, rage is actually like one of the best abilities, especially as a starter, because with rage you actually have a lot of like tier three magic opened up, meteors opened up, um, the physical attacks if you happen to have stray cat or gold bear. So you're looking for some of those rages. So usually as a starter, rage is a magic ability, Esper, or a magic ability like a ability. So even if you find like Atlas armlets, whatever, you're probably going to be putting earrings on Gal to take advantage of the magic boost because magic is just so strong early on. And then once you're getting past like level 40, then physical attacks really take over, and that's the fastest way through the seed. So if you have a good early magic ability to take advantage of, like by all means, make sure you're doing that. Yeah, no problem here. I mean, I think it is, just one thing to kind of mention is come up with a standard opener. Like find a way to like go through the seed and get certain dance steps down and do the same thing over and over. It really does help. The less that you're thinking about how to navigate a seed, and the more that you're thinking about the content of like what you're getting, the better off you are, just in general. Um, those chests, you got a tortoise shield and an elixir, are the two things that kind of stood out to me as potential sellables, especially the elixir. So, certainly you want to think about, as you're picking things up, is there anything worth selling? That elixir is probably the main thing. If you find something that's worth it, obviously. Um, yeah, no problem with just buying a couple of everything here. Remedies are worth buying if you get a couple of those. I presume that you didn't want to buy those just in this situation with not a lot of money. Genji Glove was an interesting find. So, one thing I will stop and talk about here. So, skip the weapon shop there. Um, if you're having trouble finding offense to start a seed, think about actually swinging by the weapon shops, even if you're just face checking it. You never know if you'll find fire rods, ice rods, shurikens, noise blaster. If you're looking to do like katana soul, maybe you'll find a VK, an Atma weapon. Ragnarok. A lot of things are kind of potentially in a weapon shop. There's no reason for you not to at least take a quick look. Doesn't mean that you have to buy anything. It could be just something you file away in your mind, like the Genji glove that was in the relic shop here. So, I'd file that away and say, hey, if I get two Illuminas or two Ragnaroks or two VKs, I might be interested in coming back for the Genji glove. So, one more thing that I'll mention. So, going into the training house, actually, I'll let this run while I talk about this. So, what you're doing when you go in the training house, if you're hitting all three doors, which I think you do here, so you're end up spending about a minute for a 3 chests and a monster in a box check. So, even if you find something, like you're spending a full minute doing that, in that same amount of time, you could full clear returners, get 9 chests, and check the item shop there. You're also like taking the risk of saving. There could be something terrible in this chest, honestly. So like the fact it's a Lobo kind of absolves you a little bit here, but you also want to go straight to belt. You don't want to take any random encounters with a Gal start because you don't want there to be anything other than a Lobo on the Velt when you try to go and actually get your first check done and throw dried meat at the first thing you see. So you actually ended up taking a risk there. It didn't actually hurt you because it was a Lobo in the box, but what was the thought process there? It's just something to think about. Like you could have just done 9 chests at returners, got more value, and that you wouldn't have had to take any risk with the monster in a box. It could have been a monster in a box you couldn't even have taken. Another thing that's like discretionary, but it's something to think about. So you came down here, skipped over returners. So if you end up going back to returners, you're going to end up doubling back. I mean, again, it's not the end of the world. It's just a little bit of inefficiency, but it's those little inefficiencies that kind of get in the way. So, you may want to think about if you're going to go to returners anyway, just go returners first, then go to South Figaro. In this situation, when you go to, like, if you go in the sequence that you did, well, South Figaro, you end up having, like, nothing basically. You didn't have anything other than an elixir really to sell. I mean, you could have sold the White Cape, Mursami. Elixir is probably the main thing. Debilitator you can sell. It's worth kind of thinking about what you could sell out of that group. But you could have had more stuff to sell if you went to returners first, looted that full 9 chests. You'll find 1 or 2 things you don't care about, and then you could have came here and had a easier time. Also, like rage start, I'd be looking for Magus hats, just to boost like Gal's power, because Gal's going to take advantage of any magic stats that he has, that you have collectively as a group. So it's not a bad thing to just face check shops. Armor shops are harder to face check after the first like 5 minutes, but during the first like 5-6 minutes of a suit, like the first shops you look at, might as well get a few extra magic points, a little bit more damage. I mean, it only helps your cause. It's not like you're gonna have a helmet that's you're gonna replace it with. You sold the gold helmet, and that's actually better defense by quite a bit than a Magus hat. So getting experience here is awesome. Equipping the experience egg here doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because so what are you like planning for there is kind of the question I would have. So like you have Saban, and as part of like having Saban, you're in a situation where it's like, what's his like benefit to the party by having that egg on? Sometimes you have to think about the trade-offs and the opportunity cost there. So like, is Saban going to eventually be able to equip something that you think will be helpful? Saban doesn't have any known equips that are like good as his like as part of his fixed set. Like you don't know if he'll be able to use Illumina, Ragnarok, VK, or Atma weapon, like all the best weapons in the game. There's no idea whether Saban or Shadow or Gal could use any of the above. Actually, for sure, Gal can't because of his rage. But So you don't know who's going to be best in the future. So the other way to look at it is who's going to be the most beneficial now. Best character right now is actually Gal. So Rage is a quick starter ability. It's something that you could actually take advantage of early. Now, you know, I would say Gal is like the easy choice to pick. The second choice to pick is finish looting everything. Do any free checks that you're going to do. You haven't touched Gal's grandfather's house for like shadow check. You haven't looked at what is on the belt. So once you do the belt check, like you're going to have like 2 or 3 checks under your belt. You could go to Zen and do Zen Thief. So if you do all of that stuff, and then you get one thing that's really interesting, say something that's like Magic Power Plus or Strength Plus, and you're like really excited about it, then you put the experience egg on somebody. But if you're just gonna go, kind of more neutral, what you can do is just throw it on Gal, and that's a completely acceptable move too. So just looting here. I mean, nothing too crazy. Soul Saber is a good sellable. It's usually worth like 4 or 5K. So nothing to complain about there. Zephyr Cape, 18 grand. So all of a sudden you have an Elixir, White Cape, Zephyr Cape, Soul Saber. You probably have about 33, 34K worth of sellables. So you're most of the way, if not all the way, to Zen Thief, depending on how good the RNG is. So again, something to think about. I'm a big believer in selling elixirs early because about 10, 15 to 20% of the bosses in World's Collide actually drop elixirs, and it's not a small list either. Like Atma weapon, tunnel armor. Like you could come up with a big list. I just named two. You could end up selling those, pick it back up later through any boss fight that you take, and then you'll still have elixirs for the final boss. You also have X potions, so like another reason. So, I was already talking about this, but this is that like doubling back. Like you passed over it, you came back. I mean, it's a maybe 5 second difference, just the routing. But what you did lose there is the ability to like sell that ribbon to buy, something that you wanted. If there happened to be like a good armor, or maybe you passed the armor shop because you didn't have money. You would have had money. You would have had the time and the efficiency to go do that. So now with that ribbon, the elixir, thief glove, another Zephyr cape, like you probably have 50, 55K worth of stuff to sell. Another elixir gets you north of 60. I mean, all of a sudden, like if you really wanted to sell the farm, you could go and buy what do you call it? You could buy Zen Thief pretty easily and not have any trouble with it. Yeah, I assume that was just a face check just to see like what your abilities are. I get the feeling that you may have forgotten there, but not the end of the world. I mean, it's better to check, but I guess checking there was weird because you weren't going to like equip your characters. You're just checking because you were probably thinking about like what's my next move. Try to do it again when you're saving, when you're just about to take a fight. Try to do your like equipping as like a group. It was also, I mean, it's fine if you didn't really have any interest in that the merchant. Like if you're not going to check the item shop, don't check the item shop. But if you have interest in the item shop, like just do it while you're there. Like if you know that you need sleeping bags, you didn't buy a full set, you only bought like 13, 14. I assume you won a few more. You didn't have any tents. You didn't buy remedies. So there's stuff out there. Warpstones. Yeah, you only have one of that you looted. Um, that's all stuff that you could actually take advantage of. So I'd still say that like when you have checks like this one, like if you go to Zen, if you go to Gal's grandfather's house, it's worth kind of just focusing on taking a few like quick checks at item shops. Take advantage of the physical location where you're in. Like you might find something that's really helpful and gets you ahead, that somebody else may have skipped. Or, more the scarier thing is everybody else checks something and gets it and you didn't because you're trying to cut a little bit of time. Like you don't want to be in a position where everybody else found warp stones at Gal's grandfather's house, but because you didn't look at it. So just something to be aware of. Again, it's not an end all be all, but it is something that you should be thinking about. So in this situation, one more thing that I'll mention is because you have a relic doesn't mean you have to equip a relic. Like ribbon, Zephyr Cape, like is there a reason that you would want to have that on? So, and the reason I say that, and that maybe comes off a little harsh, but like, what's the benefit to your team by having that on? Is it worth more as a sellable where you just give that away to for half price? Or is it more valuable on your character? Now, you may want to keep a ribbon in case you go for Curse Shield, right? So, okay, yeah, that's fair. Go ahead and keep the ribbon for that. But if you're not keeping the ribbon for that, like, how many status affected bosses are you actually expecting to run into? I would suspect the number is pretty short. It's probably two or three. You're probably worried about maybe an overflow or something. Yeah, no problem with doing this. When I do this check, right, wrong, or indifferent, I usually go down to where Serpent Trench is so that I don't have to go chasing a lot here. Because, like, I'm going to do this check as soon as I get the character, then I'm just going to go straight into Serpent Trench. Also, one thing that you didn't do, so you just took like a shot on whether that dance was going to be helpful or not. So, I mean, that's all well and good, but you could have at least looked at the dance real quick. When you're in the dance menu, like if you go into the skill menu, you can actually go and see like what the actual ability is, like what the dance is. And like basically the way it lays out, it'll tell you like the most likely to least likely. The most likely dance has a 7/16 chance of working. The second most likely is 6/16. It's like the top two on the top row. And then there's like a second row. One is 2/16, the other one's 1/16. So you know the odds of like what's most likely to pop out, what could possibly pop out. And so like if you see things that aren't like damage abilities, like you had a landslide and what was it, Elfire. I don't know if that was just pure RNG that you happen to get those, or if those are like your most likely, top two. Sometimes you get baited if you don't look at it. It's sometimes worth the extra 5 seconds just to go look and see like, is dance a practical skill that could potentially get used? Also, I guess one other thing I'll just mention real quick that's a little, I don't want to say concerning, but like something you should think about. So you have an Ultima Esper on Sabin. So you're wanting him, you probably put it on him to get Strength Plus. Like you're going to just supercharge his strength. If you want to put the Ultima Esper on him though, like is the goal to actually have him cast Ultima or is the goal to have him learn Strength? I think you actually don't have a reason to have Strength on him because you don't know what weapon he can use. The more valuable thing to use actually learn Ultima on either Shadow or Gal, whoever has the better magic power of the two of them. And then you could take advantage of that gold hairpin. So like this is the kind of seed where I learn Ultima early and then use the gold hairpin and really just start, beating every boss immediately. Because like I'll have Ultima, I'll have a gold hairpin. It'll cost 40 MP in Moogle Cup to cast it. So like you have a easy offense that you can share across all your characters by just trading that Ultima Esper around. Sometimes like just knowing what your tools are is just immensely valuable. in terms of like just possible ways that you might be able to get through a seed. It's not to say that every possible things that you could do is the right choice, but sometimes just making a decision going is helpful. And that's like a completely valid decision to go make is, you know what, I'm just going to charge up Ultima on 3 characters. That's 3 paths of KT. I know what my final plan is. And then if you get like a Celeste, a Terra, Edgar or something, you might just say, you know what, I'm going to put the Strength Esper on them and I'm going to get them going. So that's a root encounter. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely a that's one where I do a rage start for sure. Yeah, I think you're probably discounting like how good rage is here. So oops, so yeah, that was a little unfortunate, the fireball. So what I wanted to look at real quick is what rages you have. So in this situation with a split party, you're actually looking for something that happens to have like multi-target. Um, so there's a few that are really good for this purpose. Anything that casts Meteor, anything that casts Shock, so Retainer, which is the Shock rage, is really good, and it's actually towards the top of the list. So if you see it, like it'll pop up right away. Meteor is another good one. So Meteor is like box set GT Behemoth, the Great Behemoth. So there's a couple options there if you want to use Meteor. Good like multi-targets hit everybody are kind of really convenient in a fight like this where like everything's kind of scattered out. So inch this forward here for a second. That was pretty quick, but Wooly was in there, which is Ice 3, and IO, which is Flare Star. Wooly would have been a really good caster because you would have been able to hit Ice 3, or well, had the chance to get Ice 3. Now, Wooly is also very weak to fire, so if you get that, then if you're fighting something that's going to cast fire spells, then just make sure that you have something that negates that. Now, at this point, you're kind of in trouble. And you decided to warp out. It's honestly the right decision once you got beat up and Shadow Dead. So to the point of like, why do you go into item shops and just buy a little bit of everything and check a couple extra item shops? Like, this is a rough spot where you don't have any way to really heal. You'd have to sacrifice probably the tonic and the dried meat that you have to actually heal close to full up. What you'd rather have is probably 4 or 5 potions and just burn through those to just get yourself back normalized and just start back over basically. Yeah, that's not a especially fun encounter. Yeah. Again, I know it's not like an automatic thing by any means to know like which rages are really good, but try to like remember 1 or 2 of them. Like remember a couple that are handy, and then just take advantage of those ones. I mean, this disaster makes this a relatively safe fight because you're gonna have them confused most of the time. Still a relatively dangerous fight though, just because they can use abilities that would actually kill you here. Yeah, unfortunately, just disaster is not a very efficient spell. Yeah, you would have been probably better off with either IO or Wooly. I didn't see with how quick you went through your list if there was anything else that was really good. But anything that casts like Arrow, Meteor, stuff like that, like it's worth taking a look at. Not a bad decision to just use the Cure 2. You could have done that in combination with let's see. So Wyvern, I think is, yeah. You don't have a lot of great. Wyvern's not very good. I mean, yeah, you didn't have much there. I'd say Wooly would have been my default that I would have went with. Yeah, it's really scary when that happens. Yeah, one thing to just continue to kind of keep in mind here. Well, actually, here. So you just learned Ultima. You have a gold hairpin. I spent 0 time. Like that gold hairpin goes on Sabin within 5 seconds here. I don't think you think twice about that. Yeah, this is all of a sudden a scary fight. Whenever you get a second to heal in these fights, like it's almost always worth it. Doom Dragon. I mean, Northern Cross, there's no boss in the game, no enemy in the game that's actually immune to Northern Cross. So, like, you can freeze anything. So, like, people have tried to freeze Kafka in an emergency. That's a completely valid strategy. If you're in a bind, like, I mean, you could try it. It's not very accurate. It's not very likely to hit, but if that's what you need, go ahead and go for it. Yeah, problem is it's just too unpredictable. Like, as you can tell here, like, taking a pure risk at this point. Like, the second Shadow gets hit, you're basically running and praying. Yeah, nothing wrong with Rags. Vesper. I would shift around your Espers just to get the Ultima on multiple characters. Because like Ultima you could take advantage of for everybody without too much help or too much problem. Yeah, Poison Claw is not very helpful here. If you're in a situation like that where it's like you're taking a risk no matter what you do, like sometimes you're better off just running. If you don't run, like you could have thrown Revivifies on them, and that would have been a faster fight than praying that Wind Slash would have popped up, which you didn't even know probably. It was just pure RNG. You're just taking a shot at it. I suspect you're probably looking just for items after the fun and games that you just went through, which is honestly it's a good idea. I'd buy a few tents. I'd buy a few remedies. It's always worth buying like 2 or 3 tents just to like you're not going to use sleeping bags for everything. So like if your whole party's dead except for one character, like you're not going to use sleeping bags and burn all your Phoenix down. It's like, why don't you just use one tent, get everybody back up to full strength, and go. So think about that too. Is just like, you know, quick little menu optimizations that may not be obvious. Like you're saving yourself time later by doing it that way. Yeah, nothing too crazy to talk about here. I mean, I agree with the routing decision to just come here. And the obligatory, is this even? Is this even randomized? There's some people that will just like power through these encounters. Some of them will like slow play it, wait until everybody's done, and like wait until there's 50 seconds and then go. You don't know if the timer's 10 seconds or 50 seconds, so it didn't hurt you here, but maybe it could have been more efficient too. Just don't judge your seeds on your worst possible situation, I guess is what I would say. Like you always get bad luck here, like don't judge everything off of your most likely bad luck. Yeah, see 68 MP here, like if you had gold hairpin, you could have been using Ultima from like the first fight of the game. And also with gold hairpin, like you could just cast it over and over and over. So, I mean, again, something to think about. Not every seed is going to give you a gold hairpin or an economizer to take advantage of, but like if you're in a situation like this, I mean, no reason to turn it down. So in this situation, you're really looking for character 4. So wherever character 4 is where you really need to be. Now, there's no way of knowing. It could be literally any check that's on the table right now. So Ice 2 is probably going on your best non-ultimate magic caster. Shadow probably makes sense. So Serpent Trench, I mean, that's certainly an option because like you could use the extra levels here. So the ways to think about this. So I would have healed there just to make sure that I had a little bit of oomph, we'll say, to get through these checks. Because right now, like, Gal has 100 HP and like 30 MP. It's more most likely that Gal dies here. Like, unless you could just crush all these fights or you run from instantly. The other option that you had, and again, this is a valid play what you did, but the other option that you could have considered is you could have went to, yeah, you don't have anything for Merton yet. And see, that's your problem is you didn't heal, so now you don't have a way to do Ultima. Ultima would have been the fastest way through this fight. Yeah, unfortunately, you're trying to steal, and I think you're stealing because you just don't have anything else to do with Gal. Magnitude 8's reasonable damage. It's fine. If you're ever in a bind though, just don't random select a rage. Like, make sure that if you pick a rage, you know what it does. Like, you can get yourself into trouble pretty quick if you pick the wrong thing. So, Gila Mantis is a great rage, shrapnel. So it's actually massive that you're finding that here. So sometimes the seed kind of saves you from yourself to some extent, where like you don't have any great rages, you have Wooly and that's it. And it's like, okay, now you have Gila Mantis, which is one of the best ones with shrapnel. So again, you just have to have a little bit of kind of, some of that's game knowledge, some of that is just kind of situational awareness, I would say. That's a hard remedy to burn, but it's fine. You're better off using the remedy there and not being poisoned for the next, 3 fights, as opposed to having to deal with that too. Generally, you want to go left there, just to take the 2 encounters, especially if you're healing. Once you heal, like, it's kind of not worth it to go right. Now, if you're in danger, like, if you only have, like, 5 HP and you have to go right, like, fine. But you're missing out on an encounter, and you have to do the walk through this area. So it's really not faster. Yeah, in this situation, I mean, what you'd be really thinking about is just where's character 4? Once you get character 4, that kind of gives you direction to this seed. So right now, I think you do the most efficient check that you can until you find character 4, which basically leaves you with Floating Continent, Cave in the Veldt, Mount Colts, Phantom Train, and Collapsing House. So you have a good selection, honestly, places to go. So I'd swing by the relic shop here just to see if you get earrings. That's another reason why I would have done Zen Thief, is to look at the relic shop. So getting earrings, especially on a seed like this where you have a lot of offense, Ultima offense, like your magic offense is off the charts. I would get earrings and then just kind of burn through the seed. You can also walk out of town on the right side, so you don't have to go all the way through to the left to like where you would actually walk in from the outside. So, interested in Zen Thief? That's fine. It's actually a good idea to look at this in World of Balance, even if you intend to go to World of Ruin and do Collapsing House, just to see, like, is this an Esper or is this a dead check? So if it's an Esper, you kind of want to Yeah, not for 60 grand. You might go and look just to see, like, if it's worth buying. You know, in World of Ruin, because it's a check, so a check is a check. It might get you closer to skip if you're planning on doing that anyway. Yeah, I mean, I'd buy at least, say, 5 to 10 Phoenix Downs, depending on your level of comfort. And then same for potions. I usually buy 5 or 6 Phoenix Downs, 5 or 6 potions, but I don't generally burn potions or Phoenix Downs. I usually use sleeping bags. So I think you're trying to go to Colts here. Yeah, you were just next to it. You missed it on the way through. Yeah, there you go. If that's an issue for you in terms of like searching through, you know, searching through the checks, like you should probably like sometimes just load up a seed and like decide you're going to a place and then just fly to that place and just like test that out for a while. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go to Mount Colts. It's not flagged on the map, so like I'm gonna go find that. I'm gonna go find Barren Falls. Just fly over to that and like get a feel for like where it is on the mini map and also like landmarks. I would recommend using the mini map for that. Don't try to fly using the actual in-game map. Like, don't visually try to fly. Fly using the mini map because you go too fast. Like your eye, like you have to be a race car driver to, you know, figure that out. But you have plenty of time to check and adjust if you're looking at the mini map. But yeah, I mean, this is as good a check as any. You could do Phantom Train just to peek and see if it's a character. You could do Kefka Narsh to peek and see if it's a character. Cave in the Veldt gives you that same advantage too. So like, you have a few that are good options. I would still stand behind this, you know, thought that like your best offense in the seed is saving using Ultima right now. And honestly, you should be getting that Ultima on Gal and Shadow immediately. I mean, nothing wrong with Magnitude 8, just it's not as fast as it could be. That's also why you buy the sleeping bags, so that you can like heal if you're using a magic offense. So you're like automatically like going full speed. Then you have your magic offense, you don't have any problems with like casting or anything like that. You can just roll into the next track and keep going. Yeah. Yeah, you could. I know some people warp out of there, but it's like a 3-second difference. I mean, 3 seconds in a speed run, but like, if you don't want to burn a warp stone for that, you could literally walk out the back door and it's no big difference. By the time you go to your menu, pull up a warp stone, like you're wasting 2 or 3 seconds. So like, you would have been on the next map. You're saving like 1 map transition worth of time. In this case, like Phantom Train, I would heavily think about just like peeking this and just see if it's a character. If it's not a character, go ahead and fade it. Just reset and go to the next place. Doubly so for an Ice Shield. I mean, you'd have to think about it. I mean, I could see why you might want to grab an Ice Shield, but I mean, is that the value for your party at the moment? Like, the value for your party is really finding character 4. Like, if you're trying to like get through progression in the seed, like next thing you really need is another character. Yeah, see, again, just not having healed, it kind of nerfs you here. So now you're kind of taking the long fight here. A fight that could be like 5 seconds. You're spending an extra, what, 10, 15 seconds? It's even more painful if you don't one-shot those guys. So it wasn't intentional, but Flame Saber is actually a really good weapon to use. Same with Thunderblade and Blizzard, because like the magic boost on those swords is like a nice little boost. Like 2 or 3 magic points actually matters quite a bit in the damage calculations. So there's no reason to like turn that down if you get a chance. Yeah, I mean, if you're taking the time to heal, or taking the time to save, you might as well heal, is the way I look at it. I wouldn't necessarily do that inside a check, I'd do it outside. Like, I would have saved and healed before I even walked in. It's good that you at least healed before the boss fight here. Yeah, Tritalk, I mean, you have Meteor and you have Ultima. That's safe to use. And you have this Fire Rod. You actually could have saved the Fire Rod and just used Ultima, and it would have been just as effective, honestly. Like, 1 Ultima cast probably kills him. Like, at this point, you're at 9, 3 characters, 6 Esper, so this is the level 18 Tritalk. Probably has about 8,000 HP. You've done, what, 7 so far? You would have been better off using Meteor with Gal. Yeah, the only bosses, so just to mention it, since you did try to steal a few times, so the only bosses that are worth taking the time to steal from, Inferno, all the arms of Inferno and the body have a shield, an elemental shield. So if you're looking for elemental shields, Inferno is a great boss to find. Dolohan has Genji gloves, so if you can steal from him, that's always worth it. All the statue bosses, sorry, 2 of the 3 statue bosses are worth stealing from. So Goddess has Minerva, and Poltergeist has Red Jacket, so those are usually worth getting. Guardian is worth stealing from. You get a chance at Force Armor, so that's worth the time. Just thinking out loud here, I don't think there's anything else that's critical to steal from. You can get elixirs from, I think, Toilet, Atma, and Atma Weapon. There's a few other bosses that have kind of situational items that might be helpful, but I'd say the first 5 I rattled off: Inferno, Dolhan, Goddess, Poltergeist, and Guardian. Yeah, those are the 5 that, if you're going to steal from somebody, steal from those 5. So, Collapsing House is a great option for a fast check. FC. There's no problem with FC, so it's 2 character checks. The reason I didn't say that, I was thinking that you would want to do the peekable checks first and the faster ones. So Cave in the Belt takes about, I don't know, 45 seconds of walking. You're not going to lose a lot of time going to do Cave in the Belt. Yeah, in a fight like this, like 1 Ultima is worth 9 physical attacks. Because that's basically where you're at this point. Like every turn you have to do 3 physical attacks to kill 1 trickster. If you did one Ultima, you would have been out of this fight and on to the next thing. So, like, efficiency in actions is actually one of the most important things in Worlds Collide. Like, you have the option to do Ultima as opposed to, like, 10, 15 attacks. A fight that turned into, you know, a minute slog was like a 10-second just quick little peek check, and then you could have kept going. So, like, those little, like, things that don't seem like they're that big of a deal, like, those efficiencies matter quite a bit. Even this fight, like, I'd burn Ultima for this. I mean, it's a bad fight. It's not a fun fight. But I'd rather do that than spend any real time on it. You had to wait for the animation of Landslide, which is pretty slow, and Magnitude 8, which is relatively slow. And for 2,000 experience, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, those are bad grind fights in general, but all the same, I would say pretty much any fight you see, you want to go, you got to go fast. Yeah, Gila Mantis would have been a good choice there. Now, Gila Mantis shrapnel isn't always multi-target. It could single or multi-target. But just in general, it's handy. See how much faster that fight was? Like, that fight, even though you were messing around in Gal's, like, rage menu, like, probably less than half the time of the previous fight. Actually, much less than half of the time. Yeah, it's a smart move to put an ether on, but you only had to use that ether because you didn't do sleeping bag before you came up here. So yeah, no problem with just burning down Phantom Train. Just don't forget that Phantom Train is weak to death and gravity magic. So if you ever need to use Odin or X-Zone, Doom, Quarter, Demi, like, don't forget that you have those options. Now, in Moogle Cup, obviously, Revivifies and Phoenix Downs are the go-to, but just know that that's not the only thing that you have to do there. So, just to go back, like, doing that physical attack with Sabin, he did 1100 damage. If you did one Ultima, it probably would have done 5 grand. You know, 4 grand, 5 grand. And you'd be out of this fight already. So, like, what I call economy of actions is really just critical in these fights. Like, that's where you burn time. That's how you lose / win a fight. Is you take that extra time to do 6 physical attacks or 5 physical attacks, as opposed to a single Ultima cast. Yeah, one Ultima is slower than any physical attack, but 5 physical attacks is a lot slower than single Ultima. Even if you didn't have Ultima, though, like Ice 2, like, you could have used Ice 2 on 3 characters. So, you definitely had options there. Yeah, I would have thrown the second Ultima Esper. Now that you have 2 Ultimas, like, I would have put the other one on Gal. Again, I probably would have already had Ultima on all 3 of my characters by here. And I would have probably put Ice 2 on them as well. So my goal would be, like, Ultima anything that I can, but then, like, if I don't need Ultima for something, have Ice 2 as a backup and just get through, like, with a cheap offense. So, like, in Ultras League, you don't have, like, access to cheap Ultima. It's going to be 254. Sometimes you want to use Ice 2, Bolt 2, Fire 2, or the Tier 3 magics are the same, just to get through and make progress. It's not like you always want to do that, but it's a good way to just you know, the consistency of just picking the offense that's best for the situation. It's like I'm gonna save a little bit of MP so I can cast Ultima for my next boss fight because you know Ultima is gonna be more expensive. Like you could start making some trade-offs in your head of like I'll take a slower fight here for a faster fight later. Now in a Moogle Cup seed, you could cast Ultima indefinitely and it's not gonna make a difference. So you shouldn't be holding back at all. You should just go. But just to mention it, like those are trade-offs that you could consciously make. Is what magic you're using now versus what you might need a fight from now. Um, yeah, good job getting straight to the menu here for Revivify. When you go in your menu here, so like if you hit fight, it'll always go with the front like middle guy, and then you could go up and then left, and it'll go straight to hiding. So sometimes like in these multi-target bosses, Rexel, anything with 3 arms, or 2 arms, uh, learning how to like navigate the menu a little bit is helpful. It's not critical. I mean, it's a minor time save, but so I don't know if I agree with that. You could have learned Ultima on Shadow. You gave it up for Cure 3. At some point, you do need to like decide like who's your utility caster versus who's your like damage casters. So like, I would have picked like, you know what? I started learning Ultima on Shadow. He's an Ultima guy. Saban's Ultima guy. Gal's a Cure 3 guy, and an X-Zone guy, and a Mute guy. Like, it's worth making those conscious decisions of what's fast and what's not fast. Like, spending time on spreading the love isn't always helpful, but like picking roles, like who's my black mage, who's my white mage, who's my knight. Sometimes think that way when you're going through a scene. Like pick a job and just let that person lean into that job. Like, okay, I'm gonna use this guy as my black mage. That means he's the magic plus guy. Or, hey, this is my strength guy. He's gonna swing a sword the rest of the scene. Or here's my VK user. Where's HP? Plus 100. Or I'm gonna use a physical attack, but I don't know what it is. Let's put speed plus on somebody. Or there's my dragoon. That's speed plus. So like, try to make conscious decisions of like people's roles in their party. You should know roughly by 30 minutes what your 3 people that you have in your party, what their role in the party, the final party is going to be. Like I would have picked 2 of your guys as ultimate casters, one of them as a utility caster, and the utility caster would have a backup like Ultima, just to like make themselves useful if they need to go down a path themselves. Alright, so that's really unfortunate that that wasn't a character. Um, 2 character checks, didn't get anything out of it other than espers. 3 and 9's like a scary place to be. So I'll stop here for a couple of comments. So that was the risk of coming up and not peaking all the things that are peakable first. Like you could have gave up on Phantom Train. You could have gave up on a couple other things too. Like you look at it and you say, you know what, Phantom Train's not a character. I'm gone. You could have looked at Kefka Narsh. If that wasn't a character, you're gone. Collapsing House, same thing. Now you're 3 and 9, so you're gonna get more than 9 espers. So you gotta remember in a Moogle Cup / Ultras League seed, the fastest way through the seed is 6 characters, 9 espers. Once you start getting 10 espers, 11 espers, 7 characters, 8 characters, like you start getting to the point where you're inefficient. You're spending extra time on every check. So like at this point in the seed, you've done 10 checks at 46 minutes. So you're spending about 4.5 minutes on every check. So if say you get 11 espers, that means you've spent an extra 9 minutes on chasing things. That's where like doing peekables, doing things that are just like, you know what the answer is before you do it, gives you a bigger advantage. Now, you don't always have that option. Like there are certain characters where you just don't get peekable checks or whatever, and that's fine. Like, when that happens, you just have to roll with the punches, make a decision and go with it. But yeah, long story short, like if you have the advantages that you have here, which means, you could have looked at Collapsing House, you could have looked at Cave in the Veldt, you could have looked at Kefka Norsh. Any of the three of those would have been more intelligence and faster intelligence than doing the full clear of Floating Continent. Now, some of that's hindsight's 2020, you know what I mean? So don't take that as like Floating Continent was a bad play, but Floating Continent wasn't the play, and you committed to a 10-minute plus check because of the routing that you did. Whereas you could have committed to three faster checks in about, say, 6 minutes. Collapsing House takes about a minute and a half. Cave in the Veldt takes about a minute and a half. And then Kefka Narsh with the cutscene is probably about 2.5 minutes. So call it 6 minutes plus the flight time going from spot to spot. Like, you could have saved quite a bit of time by just going spot to spot and saying, okay, well, I'm going to spend the next 6 minutes hitting those three. And then if I'm really screwed, I'll go to FC. But three checks like that more most likely get you there. There are times where, like, Floating Continent, Daryl's Tomb, Phoenix Cave, Burning House, like, sometimes those are the answer. And, it sucks when they are. But just know that, you know, when you can take advantage of being able to save and quit or being able to kind of bounce out of something, it usually doesn't hurt you. I do like the idea of putting Ice 3 on somebody just to like get them going. That's awesome that they put the Tales of Berseria music in this game in the, what do you call it, in the randomizer. Whoever made that decision and figured that out, all the kudos to them. I think I'm way more excited about that than most people. All right, I'm gonna skip ahead here. As much as I like the music. So you already know Zen Thief is a dead check. I mean, honestly, just go as fast as you can. I wouldn't even touch a box here. So here's the question: like when you get mid to late game, like north of say 40 minutes, when you're going for a box, what are you actually trying to find? Like ask yourself that question. Like what do you not have right now that you think that you should have? Um, Now with this party, I would say what you don't have is defense. You have nothing for defense. You have Shadow with no helmet on. I think Saban's missing a piece of armor. Nobody has any like good armor. Like none of the like snow mufflers, force armor, red jacket, a diamond vest. Like you got nothing. No Minervas. Like all the good stuff is off the table at the moment. But do you think that you're gonna find it out of a box? Um, Sometimes you have to kind of think about it in terms of not just, the next box I'm going to open has the thing, a potential chance of being the thing. Like, 15% of the boxes in Worlds Collide are going to be helpful, and the other 85% are not going to be helpful. Now, once you get to mid game, that 15% starts dwindling down to just like only two or three items are actually better than what you have on you right now. And then you start thinking like, okay, well, what could I do to actually get defense here? Well, you could go to your in Zen, go look at the armor shop in Zen and buy the best armor that's there. You might find a Mirage vest, you might find a decent helmet, say a cat hood, a red hat, a red cap, circlet. Circlets are always a good find. They're the best. They're a better form of a Magus hat. So you have a few options there. So now you're kind of committed to check chest to chest, but to no end. Like you're not gonna. It's unlikely you'll find something helpful here. You can control your own fate if you just selectively go to a weapon shop or an armor shop. The weapon shop would be to look for offense. Like Magus Rod's nice. That's a nice little thing to find. Still doesn't change your situation overall though. It's just a little bit of extra damage on, whoever can use that Magus Rod. Sabin's obviously like your best mage, just because he's had the experience oak. But by magic power, it's probably Gal. Gal's probably a better mage than Sabin by quite a bit. I mean, I guess that's fine, just to get something. Yeah, getting earrings is definitely helpful here. I don't think you've used physical attacks with Gal the whole seat though. In fact, you can't because he can only rage. So, I mean, Cave on the Veld or Caveat Nourish are basically your options. I don't think you look at monster boxes at this point. Like, unless you have a VK or a fixed dice Atma weapon, like something that's going to take advantage of offering. I don't think you touch them at this point. Or if you had Stray Cat obviously changes the game a little bit too. By my math, you have 2 flame shields and an ice shield, I think. So all of a sudden now you have Merton protection. So that's a handy little tidbit of information if you wanted it. So this is, I don't want to say it's a pet peeve, but it's something that like just gets in the way of normal gameplay. Your next move with Gal could be Ice 2 right now, but because you're scrolled all the way down to the end of your menu, you're probably looking for some kind of magic earlier. Now it's kind of, in order to actually use any kind of magic with Gal, you have to like scroll back up and go find it again. Like, just remember when you have memory cursor on that you do have memory cursor on. As you learn magic, as you like pick a spot in the menu just to like mess around and look for something, like you're going to be in that same spot next time you look. So stuff like that is also another place where you lose a little bit of time. And where you lose the time here is weight tricking. So like you're inadvertently weight tricking. And the person that you really want to have the most turns is really Sabin, because Sabin's your ultimate caster and he's really moving. But now he can't even run his ATB because you're going to go and probably select a magic to use, or you're just going to skip Gal's turn altogether because he doesn't add any value. But he could have added value. He could have just cast Ice 2, probably finished the fight here. Yeah, that was almost worse to cast Ice 2 at that point. Just because like you waited until like Saban's ATB filled. So like you could have filled his ATB while Saban was taking his turn. Or sorry, while Gal was taking his turn, Saban could have filled his. So like just the sequence of events was not as efficient as it could have been. Some thinking about it, you know, this is like advanced like mega elixir going into elixir going into mega elixir level strats. How do you maximize the ATB on the character that does the most damage? So like if you weight trick, you're not weight tricking your best character so they don't take a turn. Because like really what you're trying to do is maximize Saban's turns relative to the boss. Like if Saban can take 2 turns every time the boss takes 1 turn, like that's an acceptable outcome. I don't care how many turns Shadow or Gal take in that whole sequence, as long as Saban gets his. That's something to think about too. All right, so you got Nesper. Yeah, this is somewhat bad luck. I mean, 3 and 11 is never a fun seed. Yeah, I mean, you're down to Kefka Norsh at this point. As far as like potential character checks that you could do. I mean, you could do Narsh World of Ruin, you could do, Doomgaze, stuff like that, Auction House, but as far as actual like places to find a character, your Kefka and Narsh is it. So again, I just a reminder because it comes up a couple times here. When you save, heal, like heal, then save, then go. Like the only reason that you would save and then not heal is if you were going to go straight into the training room and take a wheeze off the pot. Like that's the only reason that I would do that. So like if you were going to go and get the spring water or whatever in the training house, that's the only reason that you would do it that way that you did, like where you save it and then walk in. Otherwise, just use the sleeping bags, heal up to max, and then go in. Because now you don't have the option to use Ultima on Saban, and like that's your best offense. Like that's your way through the seed. Like there's no reason to nerf yourself in this situation. Like give Saban offense and let him start cooking. I get a feeling this is Chaos Tunes. Pretty sure they don't get town themes on on the Kefka Narsh encounter. Nothing wrong with Corneria though. Yeah, doing the safe strats here are fine. I would recommend doing a save state, honestly. Like if you're on emulator, and just like practice this. Like just load up a save, take a save state when you're in that little center spot, and just run it back and just save state, go, and like practice it until you get it down 2 or 3 times in a row. Like you're just trying to go. So just to go back to this because it's kind of important. So like when you have the row of like all these green guys here, and the guy that's running back and forth like in the brown area, so he'll be like, so you'll walk down from the top and go down towards the to like 2 spots to the left of where Kefka's standing. So when you're standing in that location, basically what you want to do is when the guy that the horse rider is in the bottom left corner, like where the leftmost brown guard is, when he gets to the third spot working towards the fourth spot, that's when everybody starts moving, and that's when you push down. And then you just push down and go straight to Kefka at that point. I don't know if that was a very clear description, but like there's VODs of that. Physics has a good one. If you watch anybody that's done Kefka Narsh, you'll kind of see how that works. It's a handy skill to have. It's something that you should try to do. Like you end up losing, I don't know, 20 to 25 seconds probably by not automatically doing that. And you also take a bit of a risk here by just taking this fight, even though like it's not a dangerous fight here, but like if that was a dangerous fight, like Outsider Madam or something, like that's a way to die, honestly. I mean, that's a negative way of looking at life, but just making the point, it is a true possibility in this situation. So, a couple Ice 2s is probably... sorry, 3 Ice 2s is probably enough here. I think Ifrit has 15 grand. At level 40. So yeah, so you're level 28 right now, so he'll have about 2/3 of that. So a little more than 10k, which is about how much he did. It's basically proportional to their level 40 health is how much they have. So like, if you're a 20 out of 40, they'll have half of their level 40 health. It's good to have a sense of scale of like how much health they have. But again, that's a topic for, you have to have a lot of familiarity. You've already gone through a lot of different seeds to have a good feel for what that looks like. Yeah, this is another good one to just throw Ultima on somebody. But then I'd full commit somebody. I mean, pick Gal or pick Shadow. Somebody needs to be your utility caster. Also, Saban's still not healed, so you could have hit the pod on the way out too, in the training house. You really want to do that sooner rather than later here. So, here's an interesting little like tidbit. Now, I'm interested in what you do here, but you have 3 options. The best option of the 3 here is to look at Fnatic's tower. And I'll tell you why. It's because you can see if it's a character as soon as you get in. So like when you go to Fnatic's tower, you'll go in and the character would be walking around in front with all the Fanatics. And that gives you the quickest way to see like, okay, is this a character or is it not a character? If it is a character, it's like, okay, yeah, full commit and just go ahead and do Fanatics. You have Ultima, you have plenty of offense. That's not an issue. If it isn't, like say it's, Fanatics isn't a character, then it's like, okay, now I either do Hyden's Cave or Burning House. You're probably 90% of the time going to do Hyden. Like RNG Cave is a faster check than Burning House, so there's not a lot of reason to do Burning House first here, especially because you're already like 38. So like level wise, you're already plenty good enough for endgame. Is this a Doomgaze save? You wouldn't have felt obligated to save there at all if you had healed previously, because you would have just said, you know what, I'm good. Yeah, I mean that's again full commit, but you're full committing with Saban with no MP. Like even less than before. He can't even cast Ice 2 anymore. Yeah, that's one thing that I think, you know, you spend the time and the money to buy sleeping bags. Like, don't be shy with using them. Like, you're maximizing your damage and you want to minimize your fight times, maximize your damage. And if you need to heal your MP and like use sleeping bags to do that, like it's always worth the time investment to do it. You're not saving anything by saving the 500 GP or whatever it is for a sleeping bag. This is actually even a more dangerous fight when you don't have MP. Yeah, that's an elixir you could have had back. Again, it's not the end of the world. It's just like minor things, minor optimizations that actually do matter. Yeah, in this situation, like, as soon as you threw that elixir on saving, you pop Ultima, the fight's over. So back to the theory of like 6 or 7 small attacks isn't faster than one big attack that does the same amount. Like one Ultima finishes this fight, as opposed to now how many Ice 2s. At this point, like one Ice 2 probably finishes the fight because you did 6 of them already. But now you kind of overkilled White Dragon, which I mean, you don't get any extra experience by doing overkills. This isn't Final Fantasy X, unfortunately. White Dragon's one of the lowest MP bosses in the game. Or, sorry, HP bosses of the 8 dragons. But yeah, he has, I think at level 40, like 10k, plus or minus like 1. It might be 9, it might be 11, but it's something in that range. I'm trying to think, like, do I one-shot White Dragon or do I two-shot it? I feel like I two-shot it more than I one-shot it, so it's probably like 11k, 12k. Those extra little door transitions, even though like each one doesn't seem all that you know, conspicuous, it's it's the trade-off of a door, like 2 door transitions, open the chest, doing the thing. Like you spent 5 seconds of room, we'll say. That's 20 seconds going up that you lost. So instead of taking a minute to walk up the stairs, you took a minute 20. So again, that's where like seconds matter. You know, a minute versus a minute 20 matters. Enough of those like 20-second gaps, and all of a sudden you're getting, you know, an extra 5-10 minutes on your own. Yeah, number 128's, unfortunately, he absorbs ice, I believe. So it is an interesting idea here. So I don't think you specifically did this for a reason, but doing the dragon and the offering at the top here, it does give you like an option. So when you don't have offense, like physical offense, like one thing you could do is take a dragon to try to get yourself out of trouble. So it is an option. It's something you should be thinking about doing when it makes sense. Alright, nice fight. Yeah, hopefully, again, I said this is a disclaimer at the start, but hopefully this isn't like coming off as too rude or anything like that. Like, hopefully this kind of helps. Just me explaining why the logic kind of the way it bounces around in my head, at least. Different ways I consider, different angles that I'm thinking about. You know, the actions, the damage, the maximizing, individual characters. Like those little factors are what like really add up. It's what am I doing in this situation to minimize how much time I'm doing it? Because like it's all about finish a fight, move to the next thing, get there fast, and then the next level of that is minimizing the number of things that you do. So Setzer, where this is going to lead you most likely is I don't think you touch Hide and Cave. I don't think you touch Burning House. So with a Setzer on deck, I think you go straight to Cullinan, see if that's a free check, and then you go over to Daryl's Tomb. Like, you're looking for character 6. You don't really care about anything else at this point. I would have, again, healed, just because everybody's really low HP, and, like, it's entirely possible you run into Doomgaze here. Alright, nice, Edgar. So here's an interesting dilemma and something for you to think about. So you're at 18 checks, an hour 4 into a seed. What is the fastest way for you to get skip right now? And the answer isn't probably what you think it is. It's so in my case, like what I would think about doing here is I would do Search the Skies. So Search the Skies is more most likely an Esper. It's not guaranteed an Esper. It's 70, like 65 to 70%. It's an Esper. Um, doing Doomgaze or doing Search the Skies the Doomgaze fight is actually the fastest way for you to get skip. The most likely way to get skip as well. And the reason why is because 12 Espers is one of the skip criteria. So this is actually a good time for you to do that. Now, if you didn't do that, say Esper skip wasn't a factor, we'll just pretend that that's not a possibility. The fastest way for you to actually get skip would then be Search the Skies, Opera House, and then Middle Path, the two Toilet Atma and the, what is it, Gold Dragon fight. So that would be your other like relatively fast option. You could get skip within say 2 to 3 minutes here and still get like a say 122, 125. Um, like you could still get a really good time even with like the stuff that we talked about. You ended up getting 11 espers, like 11 espers again. So 18 checks at an hour 4. That ends up working out to be what? Uh, it's not quite 4 minutes a check, but it's like 3 and 3/4 or something. So like you spent say an extra 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes on the seed that you maybe didn't need to. I'm a little bit off on the math there, but like the point stands. Like you had bad RNG that led you to do an extra Aspers. You actually have more there in the seed than what you kind of showed. And it's because of some of the routing, but also it was the selectivity of going straight to a floating continent and not doing the peakables. Stuff like that's where that manifests itself in your times is not checking your peakables, not checking the easiest checks. Then it's like, okay, you take a hard check and you grind through that hard check, and then all of a sudden you're like 5 minutes behind, 10 minutes behind. And it's like, oh no, I'm 10 minutes behind somebody. So when you're doing Moogle Cup and competitive races, like that actually starts mattering more and more. Like casually, what you're doing is perfectly fine. Like I wouldn't even think twice about it. But from a racing and me Manu, I'm racing Sawyer next week. Like that's not what I would do. I would be looking at the peoples trying to get yourself out of trouble. Rexel's kind of an unfortunate boss. So just to mention it, Rexel's weak to ice. So you have Ice 3 on Gal. Like Gal using Ice 3 is the best move. He absorbs fire, I believe. So Sabin using Flame Saber is not going to do anything. But Shadow has a non-elemental attack. He has next to no physical defense. So this is a fight where it's worth actually just taking everybody out of the back row, put them in the front row, and as long as they can do physical damage, let them do physical damage. If they can't do physical damage, then just let them use Ice 2, Ice 3, Flare. Like, use whatever you got to use at that point. Um, Even if they're weak to ice, like Rexel takes next to no damage from ice. But if you like throw a blizzard at him, a blizzard sword, that actually does a ton of damage because it's a physical ice throw, which means you double your throw damage with a blizzard. Ice Rod obviously does a lot of damage too. So like if you had any of those extra tools, you could kind of get through Rexel quite a bit easier. So the reason I specifically said all of that is I was worried this was going to happen. You used Ultima, so now you have to worry about the little guys self-resing, and you take a turn. Ultima already cast like what 6-7 seconds to cast, and now you're taking that much more time on top of that to let them die and respawn. So every turn's 20 seconds all of a sudden. Yeah, you got lucky that Sabin didn't attack there. Sabin would have healed him a little bit. Not a ton, but just enough to be annoying. So again, another quick check that you could do is Edgar's Throne World of Balance. So if you wanted to just go and try to spike an Esper, that's another place you could go. You could also go to Tri-Talk. At that point though, you're so close to skip, you might as well just get 22 check skip. Even if you get an extra Esper, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you get it before you hit 22, fine, but the fastest place to park actually is north of the castle and walk south. There's a little ledge that's relatively close. There's a ledge on the west side of the castle too that's close to convenient, but ultimately the fastest way is to the north of the castle. So that's actually another thing that's worth a quick conversation. So in that shop, going back here, so you have the option there to buy elixirs. What else are you going to use your money for at this point? So unless you're specifically thinking like, oh, I'm going to go buy defense because I don't have enough defense on characters, like your Shadow's missing a piece, you know that Sabin's not great. Um, S- Strago is actually your best defended person because you optimized them after you picked up a lot of stuff. I think Gal's missing something, so like everybody's not in great shape. Unless you were going to buy defense for those three characters, it it's worth the consideration. Like, hey, do I sell a couple things to buy an elixir? In this case, you don't need to because you have four of them. But say it was a mega elixir, say it was something that you didn't need, like say you don't have cure 2 or cure 3. Sometimes buying elixir saves you, gets you out of jail. So don't look down on that, I guess is long story short. Like if you can get an elixir and you don't have anything else to do with your money, you bought like you have that stunner, you have some other stuff that you got junk wise that you just won't use. Like take advantage of it, go ahead and throw it in and just get a couple elixirs and then walk away. Make your final fight easier, make all the subsequent things that are going to happen in Kefka's Tower easier. So it's something to think about. Like you know, you can finish the goal, the game with 100,000 gold. Doesn't really do you any good. Doesn't make you any faster. Whereas you could use it here and heal yourself automatically, and then just keep going and just chew through a fight a little bit faster. Just it's not worth the time to like sell a bunch of stuff and get jammed up either. So I know it sounds like I spoke out both sides of my mouth there, but all I'm saying is like, if you have the option, go ahead and I. So I understand why you did what you did there. I know that a lot of people kind of jumped up on Super Balls. Super Balls are only good for the first, say, 20 minutes of a seed. If you can't get a Super Ball and use a Super Ball within the first 20 minutes, then you're probably not gaining a whole heck of a lot unless your RNG is really exceptional. The only time that you'll actually get value out of a late game Super Ball is if you like need to use it against a Magimaster or a Doomgaze or something where otherwise items aren't available or your normal abilities aren't available. I think it's a risky decision to sell elixirs this late unless you're getting absolute value for them. Like if you're trading it for a VK or an Illumina or something, like sure. But trading an elixir that you could use to cast more Ultima magic, which Ultima is your offense right now, like it's a bad look, I think, to sell that elixir in that situation just because like how valuable elixirs are to your team right now. Yeah, Super Balls like late game are just extremely rare to get value from. So one more thing. So one of the comments that you made when we were talking last was about offense. What's the fastest way to get offense in a seed where you have 20 checks? It's doing dragon fights. Um, if I were you, I would do Mount Zozo here. Um, Mount Zozo is a good option. Nourish World of Ruins a good option, or Opera House is a good option, and back that up with like Middle Path KT and take two dragons. If you need like two dragons to find offense, I would say Opera House, Middle Path KT. If you're just looking for one and maybe an Esper or something, then maybe Nourish World of Ruin or Mount Zozo is the right option. Coming here, like, what if this was Ultras 4? You haven't seen Ultras 4 yet. So you walk in, maybe you get an Esper that you may or may not need, and then you get no experience for your character. You're not any closer to beating the game any faster. You didn't really get value out of the check. At least if you do a dragon, you're guaranteed to get at least a few levels, so you're doing more damage. You also have a chance of getting like a big sword. If you get a big sword, then all of a sudden you're really moving. So in these situations, it's worth taking dragons and thinking about dragons because that's where your like guaranteed experiences that will get you going, and it gives you a chance at a high tier item that's really beneficial to you. It's a fair reset, but also I think you do the check for the check at that point. Like if you're gonna go in there, might as well just do it. Now you're actually gonna fly around and pick another check that's not gonna really add any more value to you. Middle pather. As soon as you picked up Ultima, so since you didn't have like physical offense, but you had physical like gear, would have been worth taking Opera Dragon probably like the second you got Ultima, just to give yourself a little bit of a chance to get like a Ragnarok Illumina VK, and then that would have also give you the chance to switch the experience egg onto somebody that could get more out of it. Um, you actually got a second experience egg, and I don't think you equipped it. Is the other thing. So like, you're not getting the most out of the equipment that you have. Now there are times where you just get too much equipment. And you shouldn't bother equipping anything else because you already know what your options are. In this case, like you only have Ultima on two characters, so you have a character that's not going to really have a goal or an offense, or you're gonna have a group here that's not going to have a great offense. You're gonna have to use like Ice 2 cast to kind of get through. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that setup. So what I did have a problem with there, Edgar is not a valuable part of your team here. Like he's your Moogle charm holder, effectively. I don't see why you would put your ice shield on him. Even temporarily, you'll forget the ice shield's there and you won't be able to use it for Final Kefka. Keep in mind, you had an ice shield, two flame shields, so you had Merton strats for quite a bit of the season. You didn't take advantage of it. Now you're further away from it because you put the ice shield on somebody that's not really a core character. So now, like, if you get Merton at the start of tier 3, that's one more character that's like gonna take a lot of damage and you have to recover for, when you could have just like negated that by having either the ice shield or a fire shield on somebody. Like other than Moogle Charm, there's no, like, you took a lot of extra time to put on extra stuff. Like I'd throw the Moogle Charm on Edgar, make sure everybody else has earrings, and then go. And that's pretty much all you need to do there with that menu. If you're really weak, you could try to put armor on your like charm holder just to give them survivability. But this is also your double party. Like between Gao and Shadow, it's unlikely that you're gonna have any trouble. Oh, sorry, I take that back what I said about the two experience oaks. I didn't realize you had one on Straga. Yeah, that was my mistake. I don't have any like deep-seated thoughts here. Um, I'd say the scariest thing is that Edgar and at least two other characters have better gear than your Sabin. And your Sabin's somebody you're depending on to go solo here. Like, again, that's why you don't over-equip your, like, not your core characters, because now Sabin has an iron armor on, and his defense isn't really great. Now, his HP is so high, it's probably not an issue. But you could actually go quite a bit faster here by not having to deal with that. I mean, this fight comes down to just using Ultimo. Somewhere between 4 to 5 times, depending on how much damage Sabin does. Yeah, it's a potentially... No, it'll be about 4 times. Yeah, and all those ultimate casts wasn't super instructive. I mean, quite literally, it's the right strategy. Any single target boss, just use ultimate and walk away. Like, Sabin doesn't have any physical attacks, he doesn't have anything that lets him go faster. Just use ultimate and go. I think it was a minor mistake, but a mistake to not have Setzer go the whole way through here. Setzer should have stood on the switch, then Sabin, and it would have opened the door for Gao to go through, and it would have made like that slightly more efficient. Is it a big deal at the end of the day? Not really, but just it's a little inefficiency to be aware of. Yeah, so just more of the same here. Good old Ultima strats. So Sabin's doing straight 9s at this point, which is a good sign. So this is where I would start thinking about espers. Um, so Sabin probably is your ultimate caster. You probably don't want to do much with him other than, I mean, he's your bulk ultimate caster. You might want to put a gold hairpin on him, but he's also like got so much MP that it probably doesn't matter. And you probably could just put like just keep him with earrings and just go. What he doesn't need is the experience egg. You're better off having double earrings on him and getting the most out of his split damage. I don't completely hate putting pod bracelet on a character, but usually you want to put pod bracelet on a character that's in the front row. Yeah, there are times where I've put like pod bracelet on my VK offering user or an Atma weapon user because I want to negate how much damage tier 1 and tier 2 do. In this case, gold hairpin's the better option, but nothing wrong with pod bracelet's a safe option. Put it that way. Yeah, unfortunately, Edgar with Grand Train is your best offense through the suit. Or through this fight. This is actually a fight where you think about stealing, just see if you can sneak a Minerva out. Yeah, nothing wrong with Super Balls, but just not as fast as it could be. That's where like not learning Ultima early really hurts you, is fights like that where it's like Shadow could have cast Ultima if you put time into it, or Gal. And like 3 Ultimas finish that fight with either of those guys. Or a combination thereof. Here's another one where it's like, yeah, you might as well just use Ultima if you can. So you really don't have great Espers here. I think Phantom, Palador are the only 2 that have any kind of synergistic effect here. You might be able to use like, I forget if there's like Odin or Raiden. So there might be some insta-death Espers that are meaningful here, but by and large, not really. So let me think for 2 seconds. So it's what? Strago, Shadow, Gal, and Sabin? Yeah. So Cyan, Edgar, and Setzer. So Cyan, Edgar, Setzer are on the outside looking in. Really, it's probably Edgar, Cyan, Setzer. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Just get your 4 characters in there and go. If you don't really care about the order or what else might happen, just honestly, you're better off going for it. So it struck me as weird that you're using the shoulder buttons to go through your magic menu. Like when you're doing this, you're trying to like fast, like you're scrolling somewhat fast, but you're not really holding down. You're like tapping down, or like tapping down while you hold the shoulder button. It looks like. If you're gonna do that, you're better off just not holding touching the shoulder button, and just hold down and scroll to the place where you want to go, and then like click on it, as opposed to trying to like control the wild bull that is shoulder buttons. Like shoulder buttons are for like in mass, like managing of your menu. When you're not in a mass situation, you just want to like get to like Ultima or Fire 3 or something. Like don't use the shoulder buttons for that, because then you don't have to like try to overcorrect, which is what you ended up having to do here, is you overcorrected. Yeah, I mean, first thing out of the box here is Doom. If not Doom, then Exxon. So when you get reverse polarity. Like, if your defense is bad, just throw yourself back in the back row. Like, make that your first turn. It's a wasted turn, but it's also better to do that than to just get beat up like you are right here. At this point, there's no rage it's worth using. If anything, you just want to use Ice 3 on head to get 32,000 damage faster than short arm takes 25. So you actually need to do a few fast attacks on the head here. It's a little risky to not do that. That's not good. Yeah, so here's the danger of using multi-target attacks is that, yeah, basically, oh, I thought you had head still. Never mind. If you do even damage though, the short arm will die before the head. I guess you did just enough damage on head that it didn't matter, but just, again, something to be careful about is, you know, damage on head is actually specifically, it comes at a premium on tier 1. Yeah, in this case, I mean, you're looking to just get through this as fast as you can. It's a shame that you didn't have a better caster, or didn't have mute. Like, mute would have been really helpful here. Honestly, if you got one more Ultima off, I would have said don't bother. In this case, you're better off just not queuing turns because you're probably close to triggering something. It's actually worth stealing from tier 1 and tier 2 just to get elixirs if you're like really deficient on healing. Stealing from these first couple tiers is actually a quick way to save yourself. So that was a dangerous application of Phantom. I mean, obviously I didn't count all the damage there, but like when you're doing Ultima strats, you can't do more than 10 grand. So you're taking the 1 in 3 chance that he's gonna not do train and not do Meteo, and hope that that works out. If you do Phantom ahead of when he has his turn coming. Now, when he has his turn coming, I think what you do is you let him cast Meteo, and within Meteo range, you're 98% chance of being under, 10,000 damage. And then you Ultima him from that, like once he's already cast Meteo, and more most likely you're fine as long as your magic power isn't like 5. Also, you want to minimize how many turns you take with anybody other than your Ultima caster, so spending any time on Shadow at this point is kind of scary. Yeah, shame to lose Saban there, but not the end of the world. Can't say that I fully understand why Gal used poison on Straga there. Oh, the tech damage. Okay, got it. Be honestly, all my eggs are in the Strago basket on this one. Like Straga is your way through the seed, and he's the way to get this done fast. Yeah, I don't particularly care the Shadow exists. I mean, take the Thunder Shield off and burn that. It's fair. Yeah, I think it was the right move to heal Straga there. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to say at this point. Straga uses Ultima and you're done. That was actually scarier than it needed to be because that Ultima that I just called out, the first one didn't actually help. If anything, it put him into Ultima range. Alright, GG's. Yeah, no, overall, that was a good run. I mean, there's certainly things to do differently and to improve on. The things that stick out are routing related and also battle related, like your efficiency in battle. I think there's some room to improve there. but the mechanics, like the actual menuing and things like that, I think generally you were doing better than previously. I would say getting the item menus was a little dicey for you, like that choppiness of like trying to use the shoulder buttons a little too aggressively. Like, I think you have to not feel like you have to overcommit to stick up with everybody. Like, I don't use shoulder buttons for everything. I only use it when I know I have to go a long way in the menu. Otherwise, I'm just holding down the D-pad and just getting to where I need to go. Um, Doing dragons earlier to find offense would have been helpful. He didn't have a great seed in terms of offense. Like, basically, like, you didn't get Edgar till late, and Edgar would have been your person to use a big sword. So you didn't really have the option there, unfortunately. So um, again, not a ton to worry about, not a ton to like that isn't, you know, all the stuff that happened that I'm pointing out is correctable stuff that you just have to sit down, think about, and focus on. And as you go through, it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna do it that way, and that makes a lot of sense. I think that's the, you know, that's the impression I have. I mean, not to say everything I said is perfect. I mean, there's obviously stuff that, you know, you could do it one way even though I said something different. But in terms of mechanics, I would say it was just like the battle mechanics were giving you the most trouble. The routing was like second most trouble, and I think the routing part was just bad RNG with all the espers you found. But it was, you could get bad RNG, but you can manipulate your RNG and create your own luck by gathering intel in a different order. And I think that's where, like, if you did it in a different order, it would help you out for the future. So, with that being said, again, GG's. Hopefully, this video helps in terms of like just all the things to consider, different pathing, different options. But you know, with that being said, I'm gonna cut my stream here. But um, again, if you have questions about it, you know, if you have anything that pops up and you just want a second opinion, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, uh, looking forward to the race that's coming up, and we'll go from there. All right, have a good one, and take care.